in Surah 13 of the Quran with Sister Yamina. As you know, this is a meeting where active participation, asking questions, sharing comments are highly encouraged. And so before further delay, I'd like to turn the microphone to Sister Yamina. And before I do that, however, how about we share anything that we have from last week's study? Is there anyone who wants to share any questions or share anything that's been with you from last week? If so, please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum. So last class we discussed about the miracles of the Prophet, and we also talked about that everything is actually extraordinary, but it's just the way we live our lives. We are so accustomed to, taking things for granted that we don't see like miracles in our daily activities. Just to name a few, for example, the day and the night passing by, or me being right now in this moment. And so this actually made me go back to our discussion. So I was pondering upon our discussion of Surah Yusuf that we did a couple of months ago. And Dr. Yamina, we discussed about messengership, where we discussed that messengers are basically people like us, but what makes them different is the way they deal with different events. And then you also, I guess, mentioned that for a mushrik, they don't see messengers as being regular people. To a mushrik, they would want to see messengers having some kind of superheroic powers. And then you told us to ponder on this question: we have believed in prophethood if we were living at the time of the prophets, and what does messengership means to us now? I thought I kind of understood that, but up until last class when we talked about the miracles of the prophet, so now to me it seems that okay, so the messengers had qualities. For example, they were given wisdom and they utilized those qualities effectively. But when we talked about, for example, was it the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, having the ability to heal the wounded people, or Prophet Jesus, alayhi salam, being able to, I guess, heal the blind. So now to me, yes, I understand that the prophets are people like us, but to me now it also looks like they possess some kind of qualities that look magical, or you don't see that on a daily basis. So, or maybe I feel that I'm confused in between when I'm reading the Quran. What's the difference between, for example, up until now, when I would read like a story or a parable where, for example, the prophet Moses, when he threw the staff, it became a serpent. I really thought that literally it actually became a serpent. So I think I'm getting confused.
So what's the question? What's the confusion?
The confusion, I guess I don't know how to read. I cannot distinguish the difference between what's actually what's a metaphor versus, I don't know, like for example, to me it looks like a miracle, but we also talked about the birth of like the Virgin Mary, so that looks like a miracle. Someone being born without like a typical order that we are accustomed to. So
the point was, it is a miracle. The point was that what we see and witness on a daily basis, babies being born of both a father and a mother, that's also a miracle. So we're not saying that's not a miracle. What the Quran is saying, that miracle is an ayah. An ayah means it is pointing to something beyond itself. It's pointing to a power. It's not telling us that the Prophet is someone very powerful, so therefore you'd better worship him. Like Isa alayhi salam, he became like the son of God, a deity in himself. Hasha. It's telling us that his Rabb is powerful. It's telling us something about whoever is making that performance of the miracle possible. So the prophets themselves, and they're performing miracles. When they are performing, they're saying, look, this is what my Rabb can do. Can you see? Because that's also a law of creation. It's just not the law that we are not used to. What the Quran is repeating to us in the way it is calling them ayah rather than miracle, it does not mean that they are not miracle. It's bringing everything up to the level of miracle, to the level of extraordinary. And it's asking us to stop, because when we say, how come he is born of only a father? And it's the time, Isra had explained that, to stop and reflect. How can someone be born of both a mother and father? Do I understand? Not at all. I just take it for granted because I see it every day. Let's assume that we started seeing more and more people being born of a mother without a father. After a while, we get used to it and we won't be amazed at it. We won't find it miraculous anymore. So I know, I've heard it again and again, it just happens, and then we will explain it through whatever apparent causes, apparent conditions it appears through, because everything in this physical world happens through some physicality. And so what these miracles are telling us, not that they are metaphorical, it's nothing to do with metaphor, it's telling us, stop, everything is like this. Is it not miraculous that a seed, a tiny seed that has no life in it, suddenly opens up and something alive starts coming out of it and grows and grows and grows until it becomes a huge tree and gives fruit, and then those fruits are full of those seeds. Isn't that a miracle? But we don't stop and reflect and see it as an ayah, as a miracle, because we take it for granted. And why is it important to stop and wonder at these wonders, at these miracles? Because then we can interact with them as ayat, as they are coming from a world of the unseen. They are, whoever is performing this, the seed growing into a tree, that miracle, can only be the maker of the whole universe, can only be the one who knows everything, can only be my creator because of my relationship with that, can only be the creator of the sun and the moon and the stars and the whole world and all the laws of creation. So I get to know my Rabb, and I get to know that I have a Rabb, and that Rabb is making himself known to me through all his activities. So whatever is happening in my life is an activity of Rububiyyah. It's easier in the first step to see it in afaq, in the outer world, and then in time of crisis it will be easy to see the Rububiyyah, the meaning, the purpose, the rahmah in my personal life, like Yusuf alayhi salam. Whatever happened to him, he didn't see it as bad, he didn't complain, because either he understood the meaning or he was waiting, what is the meaning in this? But he had no doubt that whatever happened with a purpose. and with wisdom and meaning and goodness and rahmah and compassion, that God is the one who gives me that desire for happiness, that desire for goodness. That feeling, that desire for goodness is also a sign telling me that this is my Rabb, making me appreciate goodness and look for it and seek it and appreciate it, and therefore be grateful to Him alone. So everything is ayah, everything is miracle. It just that the distinction, the differentiation that we have is due to our own taking things for granted or our own habit. Otherwise, if we every day stop and look at everything anew as if we were new in the world, then everything is a miracle. Everything is as wonderful and amazing as the Musa alayhi salam's staff transforming into a serpent. I mean, a seed transforms into something alive. That's just as miraculous. Alhamdulillah. We live in a wonderful world.
Alhamdulillah, that's good. So I guess there's no way to categorize as well. I mean, that an event is, even events that happen to our lives, I mean, sometimes I guess we tend to categorize them. Oh, this is miracles. Oh, this was super miraculous. But if it's pointing to, I know it's pointing to the maker of the event, then it's that type of judgment.
Yeah, I mean, it is what the Quran is teaching us, to look at them in a new way, as ayat. Everything is an ayah. How is it an ayah? Where is the ayah? What an ayah is, we said there is the signifier, whatever the event is, or if it's an ayah of the Quran, the word, the literal meaning, and what it signifies. And what it signifies is what we're looking for. The signifier is there to serve the signified meaning and not vice versa. And it's not there for itself in itself. And usually when we have a hard time in life, it's because we're stuck in the events in themselves, for themselves, and we can't see through them, beyond them, what they are telling us. We can't see the message, and therefore we are not we're not in communication with our Rabb. We don't realize that He's communicating with us, that we are an addressee of our Rabb, and that what's happening is not happening haphazardly, but it's happening for a purpose. Everything has a meaning, because we're stuck in things themselves instead of seeing them as ayat. That's very, very important. It is the key to Tawheed. It is the key to the teaching of the Quran. And it is what we've been doing, especially in the monthly teleconferences from the beginning, is to build the basic concepts around the Tawheed, around what it means to for everything to be an ayah, how it is related to our knowing our Rabb. And when you know it, there is no way not to be grateful. There is no way not to love God. That's why ma'rifatullah, knowledge of God, leads to mahabbatullah, love of God. And then it leads to that inner peace, that itmi'nan, that satisfaction of the heart. And it says in Surat Al-Ra'd, actually, later it will come, أَلَا بِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ تَطْمَئِنُّ الْقُلُوبُ. Only through mentioning and remembering God do hearts find satisfaction and peace.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And if I may add something short to Sister, in response to Sister Fariha's question, which was a very helpful question. So your question that if everything is a miracle, then what do we do with the miracle stories? They seem really extraordinary. Are they metaphorical? Are they real? And Sister Yamina replied that they are real. They aren't just metaphorical. They are real. I mean, that staff is becoming serpent. Just the emphasis is that reading that miracle story needs to have an implication for our life here and now, because otherwise our Rabb, our Creator, He wouldn't have talked about these miracle stories in the Quran, because they happened long time ago, and it served the purpose for the people, for the audience at that time. Moses' audience had that sign for them, and some believed, some did not believe, and so what? Like, why is my Creator over and over talking about different miracle stories in the Quran? This means it has a purpose for me. Now, I don't see directly this. I don't live in, none of us is living in Moses' time, so we don't see what's happening, the miracles that he performs, but the Quran keeps talking about them. So it must have a guidance for us in here and now, because the Quran keeps saying this is a guidance. This is not just stories. This is guidance. This is rahmah. This is healing. So when we are looking at these miracle stories, the question is, what are they telling us? And one major thing is that they are stories of interruption. They're interrupting our heedlessness, our ghafla, as Sister Yamina was saying, that we take things for granted. We think when a child has two parents, that's normal. That's normal. That's not a big deal. That's not something wondrous. That's just a normal birth. But then it's a virgin birth, then what we say, oh, whoa, that's something. In the ghafla initial stage, this is what happens. For better and for worse, we stop noticing things that happen often. So what the Quran does is it tells us these miracle stories to kind of make us think. If a child can be born without a father, what does that say about cases where a child is born with a father? Because then I can't say, of course, the father is doing it, because if the father was doing it, how could it happen without a father? So it makes us rethink our assumptions about everyday things. Just because they happen all the time, it doesn't mean they aren't actually amazing. So it is initially, there is a gradation initially that we call certain things ordinary, other things miraculous, but what the Quran wants us to do is to go deeper and see that what we call as miraculous, as a miracle, is giving us a message that everything is happening through God's power, that the same power that makes Isa alayhi salam, Jesus peace be upon him, born without a father, is the same power that must be behind every single birth. Because when we look at it carefully and not with unawareness, then we see that actually birth of a normal, so-called normal child is actually amazing. Just wanted to add that. Is there anyone else who wants to share anything from last class, last meeting? Any questions or comments that you want to raise at this time about last discussion? Okay, so once again, please feel free to ask questions and share comments as Sister Yamina is leading us through today's session from Surah Ra'd. With that reminder and without further ado, I turn the microphone to Sister Yamina for today's session. Thank you, Sister Yamina.
Thank you, Isra. And thank you for the questions and the clarification. They were helpful, alhamdulillah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسولنا محمد وعلى أصحابه وأهله أجمعين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. Last week we ended with Ayah 8 and Ayah 9, and it read, استعيذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الله يعلم ما تحمل كل أنثى وما تغيض الأرحام وما تزداد وكل شيء عنده بمقدار عالم الغيب والشهادة الكبير المتعال. God knows what every female bears, and by what the wombs may fall short and what they may increase, for with him everything is in a fixed measure. He knows both what is hidden and what is manifest. He is the Supreme One, Al-Kabir, the Great maybe, the Transcendent. And it's interesting that this Al-Muta'al, this name of God in a noun form, Al-Muta'al, is only mentioned once in the Quran, and it is here in this ayah, the 9th ayah of Surah Al-Ra'd. It is also used in verb form, ta'ala. And interestingly, it's used, for instance, in Surah Al-Mu'minun, Surah 23, in ayah 92, in an ayah that we repeat all the time. We say عالم الغيب والشهادة فتعالى عما يشركون, or we say سبحانه وتعالى عما يشركون in another instance. So this سبحانه وتعالى عما يشركون, or عالم الغيب والشهادة, exactly like here, عالم الغيب والشهادة الكبير المتعال, عالم الغيب والشهادة فتعالى عما يشركون. He knows both what is hidden and what is manifest. Is above what they associate with him. He transcends all shirk, all the shirk that they commit. He is above all that. He transcends that. And it's interesting because when we say Subhanahu wa ta'ala amma yushrikun, this we repeat more often. Subhanahu is that tasbih, which is usually translated as glorification, and tasbih is that God is beyond any fault or anything less than perfect, anything that we attribute to him in our ghafla that is not the best because of our unawareness, because of our own perception. Subhanahu, he is above that. Wa ta'ala, you see it comes together. He transcends, he is beyond all that. That's what transcendence means here. So it's the word may be misleading because transcendent has a particular meaning in Western philosophy and religion, like in Christianity, for instance. So here it's above, he is beyond any shirk. So it also reminds us again that we are talking here about people who do not believe that what has been sent to the Prophet ﷺ is haqq, is the truth. And these people are akthar nas, most people. Just to remember the context. So we're talking about their shirk because we're talking about shirk because they do not deny the existence of God. They talk about God, they believe, they think that they believe in God, but this God is not the God that who is making himself known to us, revealing himself to us in the Quran. And in the first ayah it says these are most people, so it is like almost like a warning, and be careful, this is most people, so I can't easily dismiss it and say I'm out of it. So it helps us take the message of this surah at heart, inshallah. And the next ayah, the 10th ayah, carries on and says, سواء منكم من أسر القول ومن جهر به ومن هو مستخف بالليل وسارب بالنهار. وسارب بالنهار. It makes no difference. It makes no difference to God whether you conceal your thought or bring it into the open, and whether you seek to hide in the night or go out in the light of day. And Ibn Abbas says whether you seek to hide your evil evil thoughts, evil deeds, anything that is bad. So it makes no difference whether we conceal our thought or bring it into open, whether we seek to hide in the night or go out in the light of day. And this ayah is explaining the extent of God being Alimul Ghaybi wa Shahada, the one who knows, the knower of what is hidden and unknown and unseen, as well as what is manifest and seen and known. So it's saying like there is nothing to hide, nowhere to hide. He knows everything. And as a consequence of this quality of God being Alimul Ghayb wa Shahada, being the one who knows what is unseen and what is seen, is that there is no way we can hide, no hiding from Him. In other words, whether we acknowledge it or not, whether we're aware of it or not, we're totally dependent on Him. We exist through His sustaining, because hiding, if I could hide, it would mean that there is part of existence that is not related to Him, or part of me that is independent of Him. That is not the case. Whether I'm aware of it or not, I'm totally dependent on Him. And we only exist through His sustaining. And we are being sustained and created right now. Right now, any one of us could drop dead and we could do nothing about it. As it says in the ayah, قَدْ خَلَقْتُكَ مِنْ قَبْلُ وَلَمْ تَكُ شَيْئًا, in Surah Maryam, Surah 19, ayah 9, it says, I have created you aforetime out of nothing, when you were nothing. So, like, we didn't bring ourselves to the world. And this means not only when I was born, but every time. Like, I go to sleep, it's like a mini death, and I wake up and I don't know how I wake up. And I don't have to wake up. Some people end up one day not waking up. So just because I wake up every day does not mean that tomorrow also I will wake up. So we had no say in our coming into this world. We had no say on where we were born, to whom, in which conditions, how we look, our abilities, our gifts, and all that. And we don't know the end. We don't know where and when we leave this world. وَمَا كَانَ لِنَفْسٍ أَن تَمُوتَ إِلَّا بِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ كِتَابًا مُؤَجَّلًا. No human being can die save by God's leave, by God's permission. You remember the miracles happened بِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ. The miracles that the prophets performed, it was saying they happened إِلَّا بِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ. Our death also is a miracle. It happens إِلَّا بِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ. And at a term preordained. He knows when. And He knows where as well. He says, إن الله عنده علم الساعة وينزل الغيث ويعلم ما في الأرحام وما تدري نفس ماذا تكسب غدا وما تدري نفس بأي أرض تموت إن الله عليم خبير. Surely, verily, with God alone rests the knowledge of when the last hour will come. And He it is who sends down rain. And He alone knows what is in the wombs. I mean, even now we know we know the gender, but we don't know the child. We don't know who is coming. Whereas no one knows what he will reap tomorrow. We don't know what will happen to us tomorrow. We don't know actually what will happen to us in an hour. And no one knows in what land he will die. Verily, God alone is all-knowing, all-aware. So when we remember how limited we are, and to that extent, the more I'm aware of my limitedness, to that extent, I am able, there is the possibility to recognize the extent of God's knowledge, of God's controlling everything, of God's sustaining everything. So we're totally ibadullah. Ibad in the sense of, ibad is the plural of abd. Abd is in the sense of we're totally owned. We do not own ourselves. We don't own our life. Someone else does. Someone else is taking care of it. Someone else is sustaining it. He creates everything and sustains everything.
Dr. Yamina?
Yes.
When we talk about only he knows what is concealed in the womb, so basically he knows what the soul will, the type of teaching he'll have to teach the soul when it comes into this transient world.
That, and also he knows who is coming. Like the parents, the people around, don't know who is coming. They don't know anything about that soul. And it will unfold as the child starts growing. We start realizing what his character is and what his choices are and what his inclinations are and what his abilities are. And even the look is going to keep changing as he grows. So he only knows that. We don't know. Right? It's completely, it includes what you said.
So I'm just wondering, so he knows like what type of events this child is gonna come across, and based on his choices.
Before that, he knows who is coming. We don't know what is in the womb, like what kind of human being is in the womb, what kind of character he has, what kind of look, everything, whether physical or non-physical, the seen and the unseen. And then the second stage will be, as you said, what will happen to this person, because we don't know even what will happen to ourselves.
Because at the end of the day, we do know certain things about the baby. I mean, we're not expecting a rabbit. We're expecting a human being.
Yeah.
With 2 eyes, 1 nose, and then with ultrasound and other technology, we can actually take a peek in the womb now. So we see certain things, but many things we don't. I think even when the child is born, you don't see. Like in a couple years, the child unfolds, and it turns out that this child is a very actually social child, or very
shy, or
like,
or angry, or
so many things about that child in the womb we have no clue about, even with the highest technology. So we know certain things definitely, but even that knowledge is given to us also. That's another no.
Does it make sense, Fariha?
It does, but I was just wondering, when that child come into this transient world, later on, based on the type of choices, or when he uses his free will, based on that, I guess only his creator would know what he needs to teach that child. Or does that changes based on, throughout his lifespan, based on the...
It's coming actually, and that is not only for what is in the womb, it's for all of us, because we were all in the womb once anyways, but that's true for all of us. And it's going to come in the following ayah, inshallah, in ayah 11. But here, when it's talking about what is in the womb, it's more about the child himself, rather than what's happening rather than the choices. Yes, please.
Okay, and I was also just going back to ayah 8, when it says God knows what any female bears in her womb. So now, and then later on when you were discussing ayah 9, so to me now, even ayah 8 looks like it's talking to everyone, humanity itself. It's not only just female, just male also, in terms of only the creator knows the type of, like, our perceptions, what we are, the type of thoughts we're building up in ourselves. I don't know, I was taking of it that way, ayah 8, but since it specifically says womb, then it's talking about, I guess, what we discussed last time, where you said, you know, you have like sometimes premature birth, but then it looks to us that way, but only he knows. I mean, when, I mean,
we talked about
the average period that a child is supposed to come into the world.
And we said that was one explanation, one interpretation. The second one was more general, and it included not only the time of birth, but also a child may have some gifted in one area more than others, and vice versa, and less in another area. Some are good at maths, and the other one is good at literature. Some are stronger, taller, and the other one is weaker, but has something else. And so all those particularities, like that ayah was inviting us, inviting those who could not see everything is an ayah, and we're asking therefore for a special ayah, for a miracle from the Prophet. We're saying, look at your own birth, look at how you came. You had no say in who you are, and so he's the one who decides who is what, while he's still in his mother's womb. And when we come to the world, everything is already, it's clear which child is, what abilities, and what capacities, and what looks, and everything is already determined by someone else. That's the Rabb. So this is an ayah again, of course, because it's the ayah is telling us something that if we reflect on and ponder upon, then we will find our Rabb. We will know who our Rabb is. It's certainly not ourselves.
Okay, thank you. It makes sense now. So basically, an ayah points to
a reality. And that reality is an ayah that points to a reality about the God, about the divine names. That is what we need. We need compassion, we need rahmah, we need knowledge, we need power, we need beauty, we need, and that's what we seek all our life. All our achievements, all our efforts in life are, you see behind them are, you find the meaning of divine names. We work harder to get more money, to get a nicer house. Nicer house means bigger, nicer, more beautiful. And you see, or beautiful, big, all these are names of God. For some reason, we are all attracted to that. We all want better in general, although we may not agree what beautiful is, but we all agree that we want more beautiful, we want better, we want more perfect. That's how we've been created. That's also a sign, an ayatul rububiyyah, that it's not from ourselves. Because I can't say I'm bored with this, I'm going to change it. I'm going to now start liking everything that is ugly and crappy, and I can force myself, but I'm going to be miserable, because that's not how I was created. It would go against my fitrah. Isra, were you going to say something?
Yes, it was a different point when Sister Fariha noted when she referred to verse 8, when it says God knows what any female bears, in her womb, and she said it says female, so it's talking about the womb, but we could think about it more general, whatever anybody is bearing, carrying within themselves. Then all of a sudden that connected for me with verse 10, because verse 10 is saying it's the same if you conceal a thought or you bring it in the open. He knows everything. I was excited because all of a sudden like the verses when I first read, they seem slightly disjointed. You know, it talks about the female in the womb, and then it turns to how God is transcendent, and then it turns to talking about how God knows everything. But then all of a sudden, I could see that intimate link between verse 8 and verse 10. So I was excited because verse 8 is talking about the baby in the womb, and then verse 10 is talking about whatever anybody's bearing, basically,
it's
not just
generalizing.
physically. Yeah, so I was excited. That was
Fariha?
Yes.
So what you said is not in 8, but and you were right that you generalized it, because you said if it's true for the baby in the mother's womb, then it should be true for anything anyone bears, and that's exactly what the other ayah is saying. Ayah 10 is saying, whether it's in the open or hidden, whether it's at night or daytime, whatever thoughts, whatever you do, whether you hide it or not, God knows all of it. It's the same. Again, that's what you were saying, right?
That's correct.
And that's ayah 10. Yeah. And so now Isra is, thank you, Isra. It said that although it looks at first sight as though the ayat in the Quran are somehow like disconnected, or what is this to do with the previous one about the worm, and now about whatever you do, whatever you think? But when you stop and when we ask question, when we are not afraid of asking question, and we are not afraid therefore of acknowledging that we don't know, and does it mean this, could it be this, and then Allah unfolds it, and now we see that what you just said is what ayah 10 is telling us. So they are related. Ayah 10 is generalizing what ayah 8 is saying. It's going tadrijan, it's going like not saying things, building up. It's also a rahmah, and it's also wisdom, because so we can follow and understand. So because it's not only understanding through intellectually only, but also we need to feel it. That's why there is imagery of the womb, of the imagery is the term in the womb getting longer, getting shorter. So all our senses are involved in this, and so that our imagination also gets to start working, is activated, and then what the message becomes something alive and something more than just information. And so I feel it in my heart, and so it becomes a knowing, because I go back and refer to events in the world, like I see people, women pregnant, I heard of different births, and may have even witnessed some. So it is referring to my experience in the world, and so it becomes an experiential knowledge. So it becomes something that I feel and I know. When I say I know, is not only information, I am sure, I feel it in my heart. There is no doubt about it. And that's the approach of the Quran in general. So that's why it's so beautiful. That's why when you understand the imagery in the original word, it becomes even more vivid in the imagination.
And we had also said last time there was a connection between verse 7 and verse 8. Mm-hmm. Verse 7 talked about miracles, and then we had an extended discourse from Sister Yamina how miracles are actually calling us to miracles in everyday life. And then immediately verse 8 talked about everyday miracles, baby in the womb. So that, again, that had seemed initially slightly unconnected from miracles to everyday things, but then as we open ourselves up and take a moment to make connections to other verses, then it really becomes clear that the Quran is flowing according to a very intimate plan.
And not only it's talking about a miracle in our daily life, but a miracle that touches us directly. Because remember, we said in the previous ayat, it's talking about miracles out there in the world, like rivers and mountains and day and night and the moon and the sun. But now it's like, if you don't feel them, if you feel they're too far away from you, what about look at yourself? Look at your how you came into the world. So it became more to the point, and that's what makes the message very consistent, very powerful, and at the same time full of compassion and full of forbearance. Like I don't know if we can say that, but Allah doesn't give up on us. Like, you didn't get this, look at this, look at this. Subhanallah, He is Wadud, He is loving and affectionate. The way He is talking to us in the Quran. So these are all ayat to remind us that we are completely created. Means not as we imagine, created at the beginning of our life and now we are living our life on our own. No, He creates everything, means He sustains it here and now. And the best example I can think is the breathing. I mean, we have all these plans, but the most important thing, without which any other plan, no plan would work, is my breathing. Because if I don't breathe, there will be no life, and we can't talk even about me. There will be no me in this world, and all the other plans will be in vain. And that's what it says in the Quran. It says, وَمَا مِن دَابَّةٍ إِلَّا هُوَ آخِذٌ بِنَاصِيَتِهَا. The whole ayah is actually, إِنِّي تَوَكَّلْتُ عَلَى رَبِّي وَرَبِّكُمْ على الله sorry إني توكلت على الله ربي وربكم ما من دابة إلا هو آخذ بناصيتها إن ربي على صراط مستقيم. Behold, I have put my trust in God, who is my Rabb, my sustainer, as well as your Rabb. For there is no living creature, no living being, which He does not hold by its forelock. Verily, straight is my sustainer, my Rabb's way. And there is no living creature which He does not hold by its forelock is an idiomatic expression in Arabic. It means there is no living being over which He has not complete control, and which is not entirely dependent on Him. So everything, including myself, my life, we're entirely dependent on Him. We're completely under His control. And this can be perceived as something wonderful when we choose to surrender. And so we realize that we don't have to bear the burdens of life, because our Rabbur Rahim, our compassionate Rabb, is taking care of everything. Or it can be seen as something that we resent when we choose to rebel. I want to be the Rabb of my own life, which is a lie, of course, because whether I want it or not, I am not and I cannot. I am not equipped with the abilities to be my own Rabb. I cannot control the growth of my own nails. How can I claim to be Rabb of my life when clearly it has a Rabb? So the next ayah, which is...
yes. Can I add something here?
Sure.
You already mentioned it, but I wanted to highlight for myself.
Sure, thank you.
Again, when you said in the beginning, when we were looking at verse 9 and 10, that everything hidden and open, God knows about it. And if when we're tempted to think that God doesn't know certain things, it's because we forget that we are completely dependent on God. And that explanation was helpful for me, because sometimes in these days, I'm going through certain things like everybody else, things in personal life details. And sometimes a part of me, my nafs, my ego asks, does God really know all of this, what I'm going through right now? I mean, he must know. I know intellectually, but emotionally, it feels like, I'm going all these two things and it's so complicated and so many different details. I know it, but my maker, I don't want to say he doesn't know. I don't think that way, but something in my emotions sometimes, a part of me says, does he know all this complexity and this mess that's around, in this particular issue? And your brief explanation was helpful, like a key for me, because when that side of me says that, I can turn around and say, but if he doesn't know, then who's making this happen? Can anything happen without this source of all power? Is there any other source of power? Of course he knows. And one metaphor that came to me, it was the metaphor of a newborn baby. Mm-hmm. And if, just in this metaphor, the new baby, and let's say it has only one caretaker, just for the metaphor, the mother, and the mother is, dressing and bathing and doing everything for the baby, and the baby has nothing. I mean, can't do anything, can't even turn around. And if this baby started saying, well, yeah, my mom dressed me, but I wore my socks myself today, or she doesn't know that I have these new socks. How could that happen? How did you even wear those socks? Your mom is the one who's putting on everything. You can't put on your socks. Mm-hmm. So you're a baby. So that was just a helpful metaphor for me to think about when I'm tempted to think that certain things are not within God's knowledge, especially in everyday life, in awareness. We forget. And it's helpful to remember that how could that happen if it is not within the knowledge of the Creator? Because I did not create this, nor the things around it is creating. So of course God knows every single detail of this flower, for instance, because who else is making this flower? Water doesn't know. It is an ingredient, but it doesn't know how to create colors or how to create structure. It must be, but there is a temptation to think that God doesn't know the details. And this is in Islamic history too. As you know, it happened that some very smart Muslim philosophers, they started talking about whether does God know everything, does he know the details, and so on. And again, connected to this, a verse that I heard being recited the other day was just the part of the verse I want to recite here. It's from Surah 41, Surah Fussilat, and verse 22. It says, استعيذ بالله ولكن ظننتم أن الله لا يعلم كثيرا مما تعملون. In translation, it says, but you thought that God did not know much of what you're doing. And this is interesting because the person here talked about, he's not saying there's no God. He's not saying God doesn't know anything. He's just saying that many things that's happening in my life, God doesn't know, or he's not aware of.
And we may not be saying this through words, but through hand, through our state of being, as you said. Emotionally, we don't feel like he knows everything. Or at least there is that doubt. We don't have that certainty, that peace, that inner knowing that yes, everything, he knows everything, which means that everything, he controls everything, which means, as far as we are concerned, everything is under control, even when I cannot control it, because we panic when we can't control. And there are so many things that we can't control. And so that fear leaves us when we trust, as it says in the ayah that I just mentioned, إِنِّي تَوَكَّلْتُ عَلَى اللَّهِ رَبِّي وَرَبُّكُمْ. I have put my trust in God, who is your Rabb, who is my Rabb, as well as your Rabb. Why? Because can't you see? There is nothing living which is not under his complete control and which is not entirely dependent on him. Verily, straight is my Inna Rabbi ala Siratin Mustaqim. So if I follow the Sirat, the path, the way of my Rabb, I will be on the straight path. The straight path is knowing that everything is under control, everything is completely dependent on him, including myself, including everything that I think is a detail.
That's interesting, and I'm glad, Isra, you shared that, because I'm just wondering, what about when we make choices? For example, you have choice A, choice B, and choice C in front of you. So if I choose whatever, choice B, for example, but I mean, I'm choosing that. Is somebody else helping me?
He knows. It says he knows. If I'm a teacher and I have students, and from the first month, you know who is taking the class seriously and who is not. And so I may, of course, it's an example, so mine is going to be not 100%. But I start guessing who is going to get an A, who is more likely to fail the class. And so the fact that I know is not limiting anyone's choice in the class. Actually, I know because that's what they are choosing. For God, because there is no past and the future, because he is beyond time, he knows what my choices are. So just because he knows, it doesn't bind me, doesn't make me choose a certain path rather than another. He knows because I chose, and not the other way around.
Yamina, also like the example that God gave about the mother of Moses, like, you know, like when she was fearing for Moses, like even he does not even know your thought, he knows your feeling. Like even like, you know, just when she was like worried about what would happen to her child, like he knew that, you know, he gave her an intuition of what to do. So like everything, it's like as if it's an open book, like as if, you know, there was this movie where someone could go around, and as he's going around people, he's reading their emotions and reading like their fears and, you know, whatever emotions and thoughts they have. So for God, we are, I mean, every thought that goes to you, every thought that goes through your heart, like, you know, he knows about it. Not only that, but like, you know, even taking a nap, like even feeling sleepy and taking a nap, God is making it clear that even that, he actually, that's part of, you know, part of what he knows and what actually he helps you do. So even things that we think of physically, I'm tired and taking a nap, God's saying, no, I gave you this nap. I made you take this nap, so it'll rest you. When you're worried, then he says, I know your worries. I mean, and not only that, but he acts and gives, you know, and made, you know, the mother of Moses do something. So just think of yourself like as a decoded, like, you know, God knows you, basically.
Yeah, that's what it means that he's Rabb. Not that he created me in the beginning and now I am independent. I am totally dependent. Whatever is happening, like my feelings, everything are ayat. They're not coming from nowhere. I'm not creating them. They are coming from ghaib, from the unseen. And you know, Alia, when you mentioned the open book, it says that everything is in kitabun mubin, in a clear book. وما من رطب ولا يابس إلا هو في كتاب مبين. Everything, whether dry or, and it says nothing happens in the world except that it is, well, let's say the other way around. Everything that happens is recorded. Everything is in a clear book. And that's why in the day of judgment, everyone will be given his record book, his book of deeds. Whatever, it's not only what we've done, everything. What you thought, who you are will be clear. It doesn't mean this, I don't know if it will be actually a book or not, but even if it's a book or a movie or whatever it is, it's going to invoke in us our life. Everything is recorded. Everything is preserved. Everything is known right now, because it's not what is my life. Whatever, every moment is what I call my life, and every moment is created for me. I am not the one creating them. Sorry.
Dr. Yamina?
Yes.
Hello. Yeah. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
I don't want to put a damper on this, but if that is the, it seems like we're attributing, when we talk about good things, it seems like we're attributing those things to Allah, okay, which makes a lot of sense. But what about other things that happen? Sickness and all the other stuff.
Actually,
I understand that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alim al-ghayb and everything that you are talking about. And you try to insert that over their personal choices. I'm just having hard time trying to really make sense to the overall picture. If I make the wrong choice, and God is all-knowing, He even knows whether I say it or don't say it, then He already knows I'm going to make that wrong choice. Is that wrong choice predestined? And if it's not, how could it not be predestined? Keeping everything that you've talked about in mind. So anyway, it's something that I struggle with sometimes, and it seems like what I tend to do is just attribute all good things to Him, and then if something that's not, in my opinion, not so great, or if I made, you know, like the other sisters talked about choice A, B, C, and I ended up picking up choice C instead of choice A, then who directed me toward that choice? Who made me go to choice A instead of C? And it doesn't make any sense to me to say God really didn't know I was going to pick C instead of A, or vice versa. So again, does my question make sense?
Yes.
To you?
And if I might just jump in before Sister Yamina. Sister Yamina, I think we have enough requests at this point with all these questions, all these important questions. Maybe eventually we should have a teleconference on destiny and free will and how do they connect. It's a huge topic, but that's my 2 cents.
I thought of the same thing. Actually, the subject of qadar, of destiny and free will, is not easy to tackle and to comprehend, because it is based on all the other pillars of Iman. So unless they are all clear, that destinies and free will are not understood properly, and that's why I don't know if we are at that point or not, but it's good that we are having those questions, which means we're getting closer there. The 11th ayah, which we're going to read right now, I don't know if we, maybe we can leave it to next week, does tackle or at least it points to the issue of free will and choices. I will just read it and maybe leave it here, and we can do that next week, inshallah. So the next ayah, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, له معقبات من بين يديه ومن خلفه يحفظونه من أمر الله إن الله لا يغير ما بقوم حتى يغيروا ما بأنفسهم وإذا أراد الله بقوم سوءا فلا مرد له وما لهم من دونه من وال. And it's difficult to give you the translation. If you look at most English translation, it will be rendered in a particular way, which is based on a particular understanding of the words, of the literal meaning. It's an interpretation. And so I'll give you the way I understand it, and some commentators understand it, but they're usually a minority, and in English translation also it will be a minority. Not a minority in the classical The translations we have are mostly based on the classical commentaries. But if you look at earlier ones, like Ibn Abbas, my understanding is based on his, because I feel that it makes more sense within the whole context, and it is more faithful to the literal meaning. I don't like it when people say that means tilka means this, and here min amrillah it says bi amrillah. Min amrillah is not bi amrillah. So there are idiomatic expressions, but that they are used in that way in the language. But I can't take something that in the language means that and say, oh, it just means this, because I couldn't make sense of that. I will just say, you know what, I don't understand why it's saying that. And if I say that and ask then the question, what could be the reason, the wisdom in this word here, then maybe something will open up. So here, thinking that he has, so this is, he here is the most people who do not believe that everything is an ayah. He has helpers, both such as he can perceive by and such as are hidden from him, that could guard him from whatever God may have willed. God does not change people's state unless they change what is in themselves. ما بأنفسهم. When God wills a people to suffer evil, there is no averting it, for they have no protector apart from him. So it is a provocative statement, and the key here, the good news, is that God does not change the people's state unless they change what is in themselves. So there is something that looks to us, and although the whole thing, the whole creation is outside our reach, there is something that is within my choice, and that thing makes the whole, is the key, because it makes the whole difference. Allah says, when you change that what is in yourself, I will change everything else. So we want to know what that is, because it's very tiny, it's just a choice, it's just an attitude, it's just a way of being in the world, but it makes the whole, it changes everything out in the outer world. Can you imagine? This statement is very, very important. Today, I think we won't have time to go there. But the issue you brought about Huda is something very, very profound, and it is to actually grasp the solution, the answer to that, will need a whole discussion of what the destiny and free will is, and what are the implications of that.
I also feel like that verse that you just mentioned, that God will not change anything unless people want to change themselves. I mean, isn't that part of us being tested? I mean, is there anything such as a concept of us constantly having to be tested? That's another issue that I struggle with. I know I'm throwing a lot of things, big issues in here, but again, I just see the whole thing tied up to it.
There are different ways. You know, there are different ways of talking about the same thing. Sometimes to think of it as, from one point of view, from one aspect, it is a test, but from many other aspects, it is something else. And why do we want to look at the aspect that we can't grasp when we could see it as taking responsibility? This statement is inviting us to take responsibility for our choices. And our choices are going to be based on our inner beliefs. And our inner beliefs are repetition of thinking in the same way, our thinking patterns, and those thinking patterns are going to have emotional implication. We're going to start feeling in a certain way about things, and then we will choose, and it will almost seem that we are not choosing, especially when we are unaware, because we're just reacting to the world. However, not everyone reacts in the world, and there is a possibility of not reacting in the world when we choose and intend to be aware, when we start looking at what is in ourselves. And so that choice is simple but not easy. It's not easy because it became a habit for us to react in a certain way, to be in the world in a certain way. However, although it's going to take some patience and some prayer and some seeking help, that's what we do in the prayers. We say, إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ. We ask help and perseverance. It bears fruits. Your life starts changing. Your heart starts changing. Your emotions start changing. Allah changes according to my inner input. So everything starts changing out there. Either it actually changes physically, or my perception of it changes. Either the perception is different, like Yusuf alayhi salam at the beginning of the story, when according to us it looks awful, but he's still connected, he still trusts that there is a deeper meaning, because he interacts with things not in themselves but as ayat. And we say ayat is like a signpost. So you're driving, and there is a signpost shows Wisconsin, and the signpost is full of mud. Do you stop and say, oh, this is so dirty or something? Unless you can't read where it's pointing to, it doesn't matter if it's clean, if it's new, if it's made of gold or made of a cheap material. What matters is that it's showing me the right way. And so are the events around us. But because we don't have this relationship with things around us, because we do not believe in the ayat, we do not interact with things as ayat, then we're stuck in them and we get drowned in them. That's why when in this surah, when Allah is warning us and reminding us, warning us about shirk and reminding us about tawheed and that everything is an ayah, it's for our own benefit. I mean, it's not for him. He doesn't need it. I need it. So when we learn that new way of being in the world, of interacting with everything as ayah, then automatically we'll think in a different way, we will feel in a different way, we will respond to the world. We won't react, we will respond to the world in a different way. No one will be able to manipulate us or remote control us, because even if someone does the worst thing, I am still in control, and I know that whatever is happening on with purpose. It does not mean that the person is not responsible for their part, but I take responsibility for my part. And when I'm grounded in that awareness, in that everything is meaningful, then I will have more wisdom, and I will be able to respond with wisdom, with justice, in a fair way, with compassion, without going to extremes, either in fearing or and not responding, or in getting too angry and ruining my life. And so I find that balance And all that, when that insight happens, the world around me either changes, as I said, as Yusuf alayhi salam, he looks at them in a different way, so he's at peace. And at the end, it led to something completely unexpected. His physical reality also changed. It changed to match his inner reality. His inner reality is that God is Rabb, He is powerful, and all those names started reflecting in his life in a direct way, because before they were reflecting in an indirect way. So it is, though all these comments and questions are very, very important, because they are the gist of the Quran's message. And they are the deal breaker, taking responsibility for for all what feels bad in my life is the deal breaker, whether I am in a state of shirk or not. And let's talk more about it, inshallah, next week. Seems like we're used our time, inshallah. It's helpful when you interact this way, because then when the answer comes from the Quran, it's going to have an impact. It's going to we're going to feel it. It's going to unfold in our heart. Otherwise, it remains as information. But now, for instance, for Huda, the next ayah is going to be more meaningful, inshallah. So we start next week, inshallah, at ayah 11. And especially the key thing here is God does not change a people's state unless they change what is in themselves. And it's something that we all repeat all the time. Inna Allah la yughayyiru ma biqawmin hatta yughayyiru ma bi anfusihim. Inshallah.
Inshallah. Thank you.
So ربنا اجعل لنا من لدنك وليا واجعل لنا من لدنك نصيرا. آمين والحمد لله رب العالمين.
Thank you very much, Sister Yamina, and thank you to all friends who joined in today and those who shared very helpful comments and questions. It definitely enriches our discussion and is beneficial for everyone when we actively participate. Thank you. Are there any very brief comments and questions? We have one major question that inshallah will be addressed in the near future, the question of connection between our choices and our Creator's comprehensive knowledge. Apart from that major and important question, are there any comments or questions you want to note right now, even though we may not be able to answer questions in depth at this point? It would be nice if anything is with you right now, if you could share, if you would like to share. We'll have a couple of minutes for that. If I may add one comment, the question of free will and God's knowledge came up in the session a couple of times by different sisters here, and it's so interesting that the verse 11, in the middle of the verse, it starts talking about how people make choices and God won't change their situation unless they change their own choices. That was striking for me again, because again, when I read the verse, the transition from 10 to 11 wasn't very clear to me. But how that question of free will and our choices came up in this discussion, and how it is neatly addressed in verse 11, or at least acknowledged and noted, is amazing to me. It's another important, interesting connection across the verses. I wanted to share that. Is there anyone else who wants to share anything?
I want to make dua for everyone that I think this is our last Ramadan session. So
Yes.
may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make, like, you know, extend the blessings of this month to the whole year, inshallah. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for those of us who are don't feel spiritually where they want to be, make those coming days the final days where we have our spiritual boost, inshallah, and we feel the blessings and the connections. I mean, Jazakallah khair, Yamina, for everything. May Allah give you a lot of barakah for holding up and keeping persevering with this. Jazakallah khair, Isra, Jazakallah khair, everyone.